Hi, this is Dana, and on this channel I speak about spiritual warfare. I have another channel on which I speak about astrology and all other channels or accounts on other social media except Facebook, or prophetic writing. All others are created by copycats, so disregard them if you can. God has guided me to talk about a specific topic in this video, namely about DNA. This is very important, and it's important for all sides, and the proper information, and people must have the proper information about it, because it's one of the keys to spiritual evolution and to healing and to spiritual fighting and so on. I'm sorry, you guys. My throat chakra is being attacked constantly, so I have to clear it as I speak. So I hope it doesn't bother you. DNA essentially is, it defines your identity, who you are. The DNA in itself, it's your energetic body, the emotional body, the thought, rational body, emotional and rational and astral body, and your aura and everything, all the energy, which essentially keeps you alive, right? Now, there are DNA activations done on all of us from the divine realm, which essentially follow the blueprint and the purpose for which you incarnated. So at certain time, even without your knowledge, at certain specific times, the divine realm will do an activation, DNA activation on you. And also, when you go through the dark night of the soul, that is also a DNA activation which is done on you. Now, the divine realm does this so you will be empowered to engage in spiritual fighting, in healing, in casting out darkness, so you can evolve. Because this is why you came here. This is why I keep repeating every time, that making plans for peaceful life in 3D without doing your spiritual fighting, it's not an option, simply because you have an agreement and the contract in the divine realm which you signed when you incarnated. And regardless if you remember that or not, everything goes ahead according to plan. So if you refuse to fight, you simply refuse to understand what is happening to you and what opportunities you're given by the divine realm. It doesn't mean that the spiritual life doesn't exist for you. It just means you're passing by opportunities. Actually, it took a long time for me to fully understand all this issue related to DNA. And even God has said to me for a long time, specifically when I was at sacred places which I used to visit in pilgrimage and so on throughout my entire life. And God would tell me, that was a DNA activation. And I didn't fully understand back then what it meant. But as I started the spiritual fighting and so on, and my work with God in prophetic writing and so on, I gradually learned what it means. So the DNA activation happens regardless if you request it or not. That was a contract you signed upon incarnation, and the divine realm goes ahead with a plan according to the agreement, regardless if you here decide to be clueless of all of this. That is gonna still go on. Those are opportunities for you. What actually is DNA activation? Basically, in your energetic field, it is activated that specific identity. And this happens for you to carry on the spiritual fighting and the healing, in order to cast out the bondage which was created on that identity. That takes place also, DNA activation takes place also because the DNA activation comes with gifts. And this I want to underline for all those who want to steal our gifts. Our gifts are being activated by God only when we have the DNA activation on us. So you might have a specific identity and specific number of gifts associated with that identity, but God will not activate them for a while. So for all this time, they cannot steal that from you. Even if you actually willingly want to give those to them, it's not activated on you. Okay? So God will decide when it's a good time to do an activation, a DNA activation on you. But again, the DNA activation comes with, let's give one example. Let's say somebody is receiving an activation of being a certain being of light. I'm not going to say names because these clips are twisting everything I say. Then when that DNA activation takes place, you will become that person. Namely, you'll feel in your energetic field all the traumas that individual went through, all the achievements, all the gifts. All of a sudden, you will be able to do things which you were not able before, or it didn't even cross your mind to do. Okay? Because this is part of that identity which has been activated upon you. Now, when you do the work, then you, first of all, heal something in your own energetic body, but you also cast out specific darkness which was associated to that identity. So you do a good deed for the divine realm as well. You transmute darkness from multiple layers of reality, God says to me, from 3D, but also from 5D. So it's a very special, actually, work with God. And you, by doing so, by doing the spiritual fighting to break bondage and to clear the darkness on that embodiment, and also by doing the healing, and also by receiving divine energetic healing, and by receiving the divine grace through good deeds, you receive further healing, divine healing. And by doing that, you purify that identity. You purify that DNA. You transform that. So that is a very special. I will give one example, maybe to be more. God keeps showing to me. Give an example. Give an example. Okay, so I will give one example. I spoke in one of the videos before about me when I was in Chile, and that God didn't tell me why I'm there. I was actually thinking that I will establish myself there and I will buy a house there and I will stay there, develop a business and so on. But he did say when I stepped foot on Chilean soil, 3 months. That's all he said, 3 months. And after a few weeks, he actually revealed to me that I was supposed to break bondage with a certain, with 3 women actually who were in the household where I was staying. And basically he said, as I told you then, these women have done tremendous harm to our lineage and tremendous aggression towards a woman from our lineage in a Nazi camp, prison camp. And they tortured her, they tried to kill her, they poisoned her, they killed her baby. This is in a nutshell, but then God showed to me one by one exactly what those women have done. And you have to break this bondage, right? So you have now an embodiment of that woman for whom you break bondage. Therefore, the energetic body of that DNA was activated in my energetic body by God at that particular moment. Now, God has guided me for a long time to explain this, because it seems like after I made that video, all these crazy bastards started requesting and claiming different DNA activation and embodiment, and they started doing more harm in the world because they didn't receive approval from the divine realm, but still they started behaving like they received embodiment, claiming certain identities, You see, this is why I don't even know if it's good when I share all this information, because they twist everything, they do more harm. So God has guided me to speak about this and to explain. When you receive an embodiment, which is a DNA activation, yeah, you will feel in your energetic field all the traumas, all the hurt, all the pain, all the experience that woman had, particularly the most damaging ones, which you must clear. You must do the spiritual fighting to clear that DNA. It doesn't mean that you're going to stay stuck within that DNA. If you do further embodiments, you will evolve, and God will do activation of different embodiments on you. But it does mean that at that particular time, when you receive that DNA activation, that embodiment, it does mean that you must do that for different reasons. One of them, for example, could be, as it was in my case, that the individual for whom you do embodiment, the DNA activation on you, is from your lineage, and somehow the claims made on that individual placed a certain darkness on the entire lineage, or depending on what relation you have with that individual, definitely placed darkness on you. So essentially, while you do a good deed of purifying that DNA by transmuting darkness through your spiritual fighting and healing, you do something good for yourself. You basically succeed of getting rid of some darkness so you can actually evolve spiritually and upgrade and elevate in ranking and so on, right? So embodiment is not something easy to do. I can explain to you, it was terrifying. For those months when I stayed there, I literally, physically, energetically went through all the experiences that woman has gone through in prison, including when they try to poison her, including when every night during sleep they try to strangle her, and they put plastic bags on her face and on her head so she cannot breathe, so she will die in her sleep. I cannot even begin to explain to you how much harm and tortures they have done on that woman. I had to feel that because I was claiming justice, judgment, and punishment from God. Yeah, but it does have an impact if you actually see what was done and you ask justice, judgment, and punishment for that particular situation and for that particular individuals which were involved in creating that. Okay, so embodiment, it's not something that you can take lightly. I am pretty sure that God will decide to give these individuals, these scripts, some embodiments that they actually claim to have, precisely so they will get punished enough so they will understand that this is not a joke. This is really, you shouldn't take it lightly because it can kill you. You can only do it when you have a certain circumstance coming together and the divine realm can help you and deliver judgment and punishment on them. Otherwise, they will kill you, literally. You are doing that embodiment and you're doing that clearing of that DNA because somebody died because of those things. This is why you have to do it. And this shouldn't be taken lightly. Most times, I will tell you from my own experience, most times the DNA activations which you receive to clear the DNA and so on are so dramatic and they bring so much pain and so much suffering that you can easily give up the gifts they bring with them, considering how much you have to go through to clear those. So this is really not a joke. This is something very serious. You become that person for a certain amount of time until you clear that energy. But it's the most horrifying experience. It takes you to hell and back a few times. And you might say, that, for example, in that circumstance, that it was not a big deal to just, sit there, have an embodiment sent to you by DNA activation and just claim justice, judgment, and punishment, and that's it. But it wasn't like so. God actually said, you are the only one from the lineage who can go through this because you're pure enough that you can stay in the presence of those monsters which these women carry with them, with whom they created all those atrocities in Nazi camps, and you will do a good deed, because by carrying on the spiritual fight, you will clear the DNA which we send to you. But keep in mind that that darkness has been harming so many other people that were prisoners in the Nazi camp. So the beneficity that you receive in astral for doing this kind of work will be tremendous. You will receive a tremendous upgrade and so on, because you do a lot of good to the whole humankind, because there are so many people that actually are affected by that darkness and they don't even know it. But not all of them have the opportunity to actually meet one of these individuals who have done this and carry on the spiritual fighting. So, and not all of them have actually, the pure energy you have, so they can actually withstand long enough in the presence of those individuals and their demons, so we can actually succeed in doing this, to clear that embodiment and so on. Also, for example, God has shown to me these women actually fed on that woman from my lineage whom I was embodying, and by feeding on her light, they got away in doing so much more harm to humankind later on, after the Nazi regime was over, because they cloaked themselves in my light and in that woman's light, and they got away without being punished, and they recreated the system through all of these astral attacks of stealing identities and so on, and creating this feeding and harvesting energy and so on, which is the result of the Nazi system research. I already said this many times. Okay, so an embodiment is not something easy to do. It's not upon you to decide when you do it, and most times it carries with it, it can carry a lot of reward, but before you get to the reward, it carries a lot of horrible, traumatic experiences, literally. And I had to stay in that for as long as it took for all of that to be returned to her, so she will actually receive the karma back. So I cannot even explain to you how much I hated that moment, that period. I was completely destroyed from all points of view, both me and Lucky. I couldn't stay in the house. I was sleeping on the terrace, because God has said you die if you stay in the darkness, which is now unleashed there. So you cannot sleep inside. You have to sleep outdoors so you can breathe. So I cannot even explain to you what I've seen and what I've experienced in my energetic body, because all the memories of that woman whom I was embodying were going through me, through my energetic field. So I was feeling it in my energy, and I was seeing it with my eyes. And I cannot explain to you what tortures. This is why God said, because initially it seems easy to me too. I said, okay, so I just sit here and claim justice, judgment, and punishment. And he said, don't take it lightly. The most important task you have is to stay alive while you do this. And this is going to be very tricky. It's not going to be as easy as you imagine. And indeed it was. And I must say, when I was done with it, and finally God said I can go, I couldn't even stand on my own feet and walk. Literally. Energetically speaking, it was literally, Jesus was next to me and was upholding me, because I couldn't stand on my own feet. Neither me nor Lucky. I cannot explain to you. So this is really painful and really serious experience. And anybody that claims embodiments and so on should be very careful, because you do not know what it brings on you. And the divine realm will always know when it's a good circumstance for you to actually do that. And when they can actually come through and help you. Also, that's important as well. And if you gain enough advantages so you can actually do it at that point in time, right? Okay, so again, the DNA, it's an identity activation in your energetic body. This becomes an embodiment, but it becomes an embodiment, a true embodiment, particularly after you have done the spiritual fighting and the healing. So you own that identity, because until you clear that DNA, that identity is not itself. It doesn't manifest as itself. It manifests by bringing the darkness, which was attached to it, into your energy body. So you have to do the spiritual fighting to actually get to fully embody that identity, and the healing and so on. So you have to do that. So basically, what I should point out at this point in time is that DNA is, this is what God says, DNA is, it can change. This is how God works with DNA activation. But at the same time, all the darkness that is placed on you, it transforms your DNA. For example, God has shown to me individuals who were royals, but because they engaged in very much harm doing and very much working with darkness, their DNA was transformed totally. And they literally became a different race. They were claimed by a different race, and their energy, their DNA, transformed with that darkness, which they took upon themselves. This is why these are the karmics. Okay, so this is important for all the karmic people to understand why it's for you difficult to change your behavior and the patterns and of your choices, because you have darkness attached in your energy field, and unless you do the work to get rid of it, to purify your DNA, and to get back your true identity through embodiments and so on, until then you're just who they decided to create in your energy field. You're not yourself. This is why God says that when he sends soul to somebody, that individual will remember who he is. Because being karmic, this is what it means. You lost your soul, and a lot of transformation took place in your DNA, but by darkness attachment and possession and so on. And you really have to go through a purification. This is what the redemption and the purgatory means. Excuse me. I don't understand why these people refuse to do redemption and to go through purgatory, and they find this so offensive, because everybody who does spiritual fighting goes through purgatory. This is what purgatory means. It means that you clear your DNA, you allow for the darkness which has been attached to you to be revealed to you, and you fight it in spiritual fighting to cut off claims, and you heal it by energy healing and by divine grace and good deeds. And so you move on. This is how you elevate. This is how you do embodiments. This is how you do DNA clearing. This is why you came here, to do this. So if you don't do any of this, you're going to be karmic, and nobody can help you. Unless you do this, you will not change anything. You will just be stuck in this. That's the point. So this is basically what DNA activation means, what embodiment means, what embodiment means, and how it basically works. DNA can be purified through this work, and you can assume it, you can keep it, and you can claim it, and you can actually surpass it and move on and elevate from that further if you don't necessarily want to stay stuck in that. But this is how it works. This is how the embodiment works, and it clearly has a very important role in the spiritual fighting. It is critical, and you can actually be successful only by working with God and the divine realm in doing in doing this. Okay, I think this is what God wanted me to say. I just have the feeling that he wants me to say something more, but I just don't remember what he told me to say. But overall, this is important to understand how you work with it, and the fact that you have to work with it. We are in the lion's gate right now, so I would recommend that you try to connect with the Blue Lodge Sirius, the Ascended Masters, and ask them to give guidance to you, what embodiments are useful for you to do, and how can you clear your DNA. Or if you don't are not at the stage to have a direct dialogue, write an astral letter to them to help you, because we are in August now, so you still have some months to go up until December karmic board meeting. So you still have some time to do some work and to gain some elevation, some progress, and so on. Again, if you evolve, as you evolve and as you elevate, you can choose, together with the divine realm, with God, to not keep that DNA. You literally evolve. That means that you will overcome and you will elevate above that DNA which you have cleared. But you have to go through that experience in order to cut off all the claims which were made at you. And it's always a matter of choice. I repeat this. It's always a matter of choice. So through the spiritual fighting, you cut off the claims which were made at you, and you cast off all the darkness which was placed upon you by whoever did that. It could be somebody even from your lineage who sold you, who created a contract on you, for example. Or it could be from the environment and so on. But you can clear that, and you can continue your path by working on a new identity, or the identity which God bestowed upon you at the incarnation. That's a matter of choice as well. But please keep in mind that this is hard work, and you have to do it, but you have to do it the right way in order to bring the advantages it's supposed to bring. And you have to do it with support from the divine realm. It is absolutely impossible to do this on your own. It's literally impossible to do this on your own. Okay, I'm gonna stop here. I hope everybody understands, and I hope you guys all will find the right information to carry on the right embodiments for you to move on your path to God, and you will also find the ways to actually carry on the DNA activation and the purification. All that, this is what I was supposed to say, yes, now God reminded me. Everybody who's karmic, and regardless how low you fell, you can clear your DNA. You can clear your DNA if you do this, but do it with God. So many times your identity has been changed. That's why I gave that example from that woman who was a royal. Actually, she ended up in becoming a totally different race. When God has shown her to me, she was a gypsy fortune teller, homeless, and so on, and doing a lot of work with darkness. But she fell down from a royal level. She was actually in the UK royal house at her time. So you must understand that it doesn't mean that if you have royal blood, nobody can touch you. Your own choices might lead you to actually lose all of it. Again, anybody who has become karmic and made wrong choices for a long time can purify their DNA through different embodiments, and God will show to each individual which embodiments are useful to you and which type of spiritual fighting and gifts activation you need in order to fight off the darkness which is impacting your true DNA and transforming it in totally different thing. and which cuts off the claims made on you on different races, by different races and by different convents and so on. Okay, I'm going to stop here because now I said everything that God wanted me to say. I will say this at the end. It is very rewarding to do this work. It is amazing work. It is deeply painful, but it's amazing the kind of wisdom you gain by doing so, and the kind of special relation you develop with God in co-creating this. And God will always show you at the end what is the impact on the world. You know, He always said, you know, we know it was unfair for you to go through this, but look now what you have done with your work. This is the reward. This is the outcome, and you are creator of this. Of course, God is very generous because I was deeply traumatized when I come out of that, and of course He was actually even more generous than was needed, and He kept saying, "This is all you're doing." Of course, I said to Him, you know, don't try to fool me. We did this together. I couldn't have done it. But what I mean is that is deeply appreciated. This is what I mean. I understood exactly what God wanted. He just wanted to compensate somehow for the deep trauma and deep hurt that I had to go through in order to achieve that. But He wanted to show the gratitude of my ancestors for me doing this for the lineage. And that also helped me to develop certain abilities and a certain level of understanding and higher perspective over the spiritual fighting. So obviously, and also there are material rewards which God always intends on giving for each of this spiritual work done. Okay, so because I have described only the ugly part of it, I wanted to say that it's also the beautiful part of it. But you will see that beautiful part throughout the experience, but mostly at the end, because up until the end, you're just very much affected by the dramatic things which you are experiencing. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. I hope this is useful to everybody, and I hope you will get embodiments which will give you the necessary wisdom so we can actually all move on into onto our spiritual paths. As always, of course, you can find in the description box below information about my PayPal account if you want to donate and to support my work, and also information to my Facebook page, so you don't get confused by other accounts created by my copycats. On my Facebook account, you will find prophetic writings, more than 400 prophetic writings, in which I explained all of this in details, as it's much easier to write and you don't have the pressure of time and of uploading and so on. And I will see you in the next video.